Hey everybody, this is JDGaming back today with a deck profile of my brand new 60 card Omni-HERO deck. This is usually the part where I go and ramble on for about a couple minutes explaining what this deck is about, but honestly, we have no time. Stratos is finally back from the forbidden list after 5 long years, and you're gonna get an understanding of this, I think, from my usual style of deck profile. This will be a let's build as always, so I'm gonna go through and explain all my reasonings for things and kind of build it step by step for you guys. And of course, if you don't have time for that, you know, you're on a rush or whatever on this busy Monday, go ahead and check out the link in the description box for the different timestamps in the table of contents to take yourself to the end of the video where I have the alphabetical profile as always, and then feel free to explore a little bit and see the different sections of the deck for any questions you may have. But without further ado, let's jump right into building Omni-HERO. The first step in any deck profile is to establish the theme and then to develop the core to match our goals. And here we're starting off very simply with Elemental Hero Stratos. This guy, if you've never seen it before, is the classic term for the word of the same name, Stratos, where basically you have a level 4 monster who, when normal summoned, has the ability to search a monster of the archetype. But Stratos is awesome in that it also triggers on special summon off of many different cards, and it can search any hero monster anytime that it has been played, so multiple times a turn, and that's extremely abusable. As if that's not enough, you also have a bonus kind of MST type of effect built in that counts all of your non-Stratos hero monsters on your field and then kills all of your opponent's back row based on, you know, the number of cards that you have, which is pretty darn cool, and you don't have to choose until you're resolving the effect. So you summon Stratos, your opponent has to decide whether or not they want to deal with it, and then you go ahead and resolve whichever effect you would like. The whole point is we're going to try and use his search effect as many times as we can. So to start off, 1 hero lives. Unfortunately, this thing did go to 1 because of Stratos, but this lets us pay half of our life points to summon it straight from our deck, which is awesome because now we get to go and immediately claim the effect without even eating up our normal summon. On top of that, we play 3 copies of 𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗅𝗡𝗃, which is basically just going to be reinforcement of the army just for hero monsters, regardless of level or anything, and 1 𝗄𝗏 as well, 𝗄𝗏 proper, which will let us go and add the Elemental Hero Stratos to our hand just so we could start searching our cards. And then the best way to abuse the Stratos is Firewall Dragon, who for some reason is still around in this game. So then how do we bring it out? So we'll take a look at that real quick. There are a few good ways I found to actually summon out Firewall Dragon, and the first way is actually through using our new Elemental Hero Solid Soldier. So this guy has 2 abilities. The first is you can send it to the graveyard with a spell effect in order to go ahead and revive a hero monster in your graveyard, or rather if you hit it with Mass Change or whatever, you get that bonus special summon, which comes up every once in a while, but not in the first turn when we're trying to combo off. What we care about is when this card is normal summoned, you get to special summon a level 4 or lower hero from your hand to your field, which not only kicks out Elemental Hero Stratos just so you claim its ability, but it puts another warrior on board, which is something we want to do for a few reasons, because now we can combine these guys along with our classic Elemental Hero Shadow Mist, who's still at 3 in the TCG. When she's special summoned, of course, we get to go ahead and search a Mass Change spell card from our deck, which is awesome for getting out our 𝗪𝗏𝗏, you know, just basic combo there. And of course, not in the same turn, but if you go ahead and use your Shadow Mist, you're able to go ahead and when it's sent to the graveyard, fetch any hero monster. Doesn't have to be Elemental Hero, Destiny Hero, Vision Hero, whatever. You're able to grab them for use with Shadow Mist, which is really cool because now you can go ahead and set your Mass Change behind it, and of course go for 𝗪𝗏𝗏 during your opponent's turn to nab a free card. But the whole point of this is now you're able to go, let's say, you know, just summon a couple warriors. It doesn't necessarily have to be Shadow Mist in this particular combo. Usually you actually don't want to use this. But let's say you go ahead, special this, you know, grab your Mass Change. Oh, I have 2 warriors, so I'm going to put them together into Isolde. Isolde is, of course, really popular in 𝗖𝗍𝗄𝗃, and she's awesome for both of her effects in this deck. So the first thing she's able to do is upon link summon, you can go ahead and add a warrior monster from your deck to your hand, but you can't summon it or use its effects for that whole turn going forward. So usually what you do with this is just search your 1-of copy of Elemental Hero Honest Neos, who basically attack pumps your hero monster during either turn by 2,500 points until the end of the turn, which is pretty cool because now you have a 𝗪𝗏𝗏 that has 4,900 attack, which is, you know, pretty solid. Usually you just use that as a free card, as you'll see, and you know, any free card you can get is awesome because you can go ahead and use it with 𝗪𝗔𝗪𝗏𝗪, and you know, just get a free card overall in terms of the number of cards in your hand and therefore the number of cards that remain in your hand. But you can also go ahead and play a single copy of DDR, the Different Dimension Reincarnation, which normally you can use with a banished monster and revive it, and that That does kind of come up, as we'll see in a bit here with some of the other cards we're adding, but by sending an equip spell from your deck to grave, you can go ahead and play Grapple Angler or Grappler Angler, which is basically just a water warrior tuner monster. You don't have to play this guy, you could play some other guys, but I chose this because I like the water attribute for absolute 0. It's a warrior, so you can go ahead and, you know, summon it off of Isolde in the first place. Fact is, a tuner means you could potentially use it for Black Rose plays off of, you know, this guy, which we'll be visiting in just a moment. But big thing I think is also funny with this guy in particular is that if you happen to get a direct attack with him, you get a free Stratos, which, you know, doesn't always happen, but a lot of the guys you can get with this effect are pretty funny. You can get Shadow Mist for another free effect, and so on. So not a bad card in its own right, to be completely honest. You're just using as link materials, because now you have a link 2 warrior with a link 1 rating, just, you know, normal monster warrior, and you end up getting your summon sorceress. So basically, summon sorceress now, if you happen to have another warrior monster, will let you climb directly into, you know, your firewall dragon after bringing out a free monster here as well. And firewall dragon, everyone knows, of course, but basically lets you go not only set up an annoying Constellar Pleiades like bounce effect, but you can also use that for your own combos, and you can go ahead anytime a card is pointing to ascend to the graveyard, just summon monsters from your hand. So this is the card that ultimately lets you abuse Stratos to no end, and you can climb through summon sorceress thanks to the Destiny Hero Malicious engine, which we'll talk about next. So Destiny Hero Malicious is, of course, the card that we're talking about here, as promised, and basically if you have one of these guys in your graveyard, you banish it in order to summon another one from your deck, and you can loop through to get 2 free summons on top of the first one, which is, of course, very accessible with Foolish Burial or with Armageddon Knight. So we play a pair of these because, along with Rhoda, we now have 3 copies of this to search out, and then I like playing a single copy of 𝗖𝗢𝗡 as well. 𝗖𝗢𝗡 is pretty good, except originally when I was testing it at 3, I was like, the hard once per turn on its sending effect is kind of annoying. And so what I ended up finding was, you know, just 1 of these, 2 of these, that gives you some more room for tech with dark monsters with the Armageddon Knight, which I think gives you a lot more benefit, because let's be honest, you're not really sending a non-dark monster with your 𝗖𝗢𝗡 anyway. Like, you could rarely send a Stratos just so you can access it, but that's usually not the case. And on top of that, 𝗖𝗢𝗡 is searchable off of Stratos, so you know, you just go and special summon the 𝗖𝗢𝗡 from your hand using any of your means, Firewall Dragon, 𝗪𝗔𝗔, etc., and then you'll be able to claim its effect, and then you can banish, you know, any other hero in your graveyard to add Polymerization to your hand for free, which will let you, again, either plus for 𝗪𝗔𝗔, or you can actually play this card and go for a fusion monster in your deck. So it's just the fact that it gives you more value means it's pretty good. Searchable even at the 1 when you do need it, and then the Armageddon Knight gives you, you know, your other combos. But essentially, just going off of any of these cards, not so much the Foolish Burial because, you know, doesn't put a second warrior on the board, but essentially, let's say you go Armageddon Knight. Well, now you can go and banish 1 to summon a Mally, and then you can turn these into Isolde, and then, you know, get a free Grappler Angler, bring this back as well. So then you go summon Sorceress off of this guy to special summon another warrior, and then you climb with the 2 of those into a Firewall Dragon, and yeah, basically this single-handedly sets up this combo, which is something, you know, commonly seen in a lot of these dark hero 𝗖𝗍𝗓 type of decks these days. The next section is an engine that I'm sure a lot of you guys familiar with my channel are very commonly seeing, and that's basically the Brilliant Fusion engine with the Predaplants. So Brilliant Fusion is awesome in this deck. Maximize on it because you are able to go ahead and summon, you know, off of Gem Knight Garnet, your Gem Knight Seraph Knight, and that gives you 2 normal summons and a free body on board, and that's awesome because you could trigger something like Stratos off of just any summon, including a normal summon. You could go ahead and summon Solid Soldier in order to get another monster onto the field. You can go ahead and normal summon your Armageddon Knight, your 𝗖𝗢𝗡. A lot of monsters are triggered by either normal or special summon, and that's pretty cool because Seraph Knight's able to get you that extra card, so you're able to make the most of their effects, and then, you know, stack them on top of each other and, you know, get some more monsters along the way. To make this more consistent, I do like playing the 3 copies of Predaplant Ophrys Scorpio, which of course lets you yard a monster. Think Mally if it's already in your hand, or any other of the cards we'll talk about in a bit. That lets you go and summon your 1 Darling Tonia Cobra, and then that lets you search Brilliant Fusion if you don't have it already. And then, you know, just from there on, you can just go off because now you have 2 Predaplant monsters, your your Seraph Knight, so that's 3 different monsters. You get an extra normal summon, and you potentially have more monsters as well because it's very easy to use this package of Performages that I love using in this engine. Essentially, Trick Clown's fairly classic. You lose 1,000 life points and you revive any Performage monster, including itself, with 0 attack and defense. So that's already, 4, if you normal summon, 5 different monsters. So you can go for 𝗪𝗔𝗪𝗓𝗏, draw the cards, special summon, do all that crazy stuff, and co-link onto your Firewall Dragon, which is really cool as well. But I also like the pair of these just because, you want some good targets besides Trick Clown in case you draw this guy, in which case, just pitch it for Scorpio or whatever. But essentially, Damage Juggler is a hand trap that protects you from damage, or you can yard it as a light monster and banish it from the grave to add Hat Tricker or Trick Clown to your hand. And I usually go Hat Tricker here because that way, Hat Tricker says if there are at least 2 monsters on the field total between both sides, you're able to bring it to the field for free. And since you have 2 Predaplants right here, you're able to go ahead and summon the Hat Tricker, plus you have the Seraph Knight. So now you have, those 4 monsters already and another additional normal summon, and it's pretty cool. It's basically an alternative to Trick Clown that helps make this engine a little more well-rounded while giving it a little more longevity. So then from there, we play 3 Lone Fire Blossoms to make this, just a lot more consistent overall, which is nice because now you're able to go for your monsters. And then to make that just a little bit more consistent, 1 Glow Up Bulb, because in the case where you've already gotten your Predaplant engine, you're able to go ahead and go for Glow Up Bulb, who's literally just 2 monsters for all of your link combos, which makes it very easy to climb into Firewall Dragon as well. You're not synchroing or anything. If you really want, just because of the Earth attributes, you could play an Echuria Beast. Definitely side it if not mained, but I just couldn't find space for it in the extra deck, so unfortunately I went along with just the ones I have here. But don't forget, Darling Tonia doesn't have to search Brilliant Fusion. In the instance you already have Brilliant Fusion, you can of course search the new Super Polymerization, which needs no introduction. This card's absolutely nuts. Helps you go and just play through your opponent's board, or helps you get rid of your opponent's board while they're still assembling it with that pseudo non-respondable spell speed 4 type of an ability, which is really, really cool. And then you can go ahead and play 3 Miracle Fusion as well. Not only is this searchable when you need it, but this is a good way to take advantage of Grappler Angler or whatever, and you're able to go ahead and summon 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗓𝗏, who of course has the 𝗪𝗑𝗪𝗓𝗏 effect, and this basically helps you put up insane boards where you're doing like Proxy Dragon alongside 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗓𝗏 and Dark Law, and now your opponent, if they touch anything on your board for destruction, you just kill the 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗓𝗏, destroy your opponent's entire field of monsters, and they're all banished thanks to Dark Law. So that's why the Miracle Fusion's in here. It's just such a key player in bringing out your 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗓𝗪 for more power and to really strengthen your board. And now we'll talk about some of the tech we play in the main deck in order to finish that out. So 1 copy of Steam the Cloak, which is really cool because anytime this guy is sent from field to graveyard, you're able to go ahead and get a free token that, you don't care that much about the stats in this deck in particular. You just get a free monster. So this 1 guy becomes a 2nd monster, and then he has a 2nd ability that says you could tribute any monster you control once per duel. Could be the token, could be like a free Mally or Glow Up Bulb or whatever, in order to revive it. And then when he leaves the field again, you get another token. So essentially every time he appears, he gives you an additional monster, which is really, really nice and gives you a lot of flexibility. You can yard this as your Armageddon target, and that's why I ultimately switched from Vion to 2 copies of Armageddon. It's because Vion's a hard once per turn and it's searchable, but Armageddon Knight now gives you 3 cards with the Rhoda that give you access to this as an alternative in addition to the Malicious, or alongside the Malicious if you're already able to yard it, and then that just gives you more tokens and helps you make your Firewall Dragon plays even more efficiently. And then you have an elemental hero, Ice Edge. Basically, it was between Bubble Man and this, and I found the level 4 Bubble Man doesn't help that much because I'm not Xyz summoning or Synchro summoning, and then Bubble Man itself doesn't need to be Bubble Man because while that card normally helps you, spam special summon, we have plenty of that ability. It doesn't help me that much over just Firewalls and Tzaruj's effect. But what I did find is Ice Edge lets you discard a card to pay the cost for its ability to attack your opponent directly, and if it happens to do that, you kill your opponent's back row, 1 card among them. But the whole reason is now you can pitch annoying cards in your hand you don't want, like Mally or Trick Clown or Glow Up Bulb or whatever you may have happened to draw, and get your stuff going. And this is a searchable hero monster. It's a water monster for 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗓𝗏. It just plays a lot of different roles, and that discard actually does help you get things going if that ends up being an issue. So I do like the 1 Ice Edge. And then kind of comboing off with that, though unintentionally, we play 1 Monster Born, which of course lets you trigger your Stratos, your Shadow Mist, etc. And 2 copies of World Legacy Succession, which is basically Monster Born into a Link Monsters zone. And since you always have Link Monsters, it's basically 2 more copies of Monster Born. The whole point is this card's limited, and although this is a hard once per turn, this is going to be a 60-card deck, if you didn't catch that part in the title and in the name of the deck at the beginning part of the video. But essentially, in a 60-card deck, you're not going to draw both of these. The chance is so slim. It just increases your chances of actually getting one of them, so you're able to make your plays and again do some really nutty things. On top of that, of course, we play the one soul charge because this helps you make insane boards with all your link monsters. And don't forget, this is something I honestly admit I forgot. Firewall Dragon has the return effect, the bounce effect for co-links once per time it's on the field. So if you revive it, it doesn't have to have been link summoned for that ability to be active again. You can revive it and it's going to bounce again, which just makes it really, really nuts. So take advantage of that. Take advantage of Shadow Mist, of Stratos, whatever with these cards. They're very powerful in being allowing you to reuse your resources. And in a similar vein, I like playing 3 copies of the Warrior Returning Alive, who basically lets you go and add your Stratos to your hand, so you can special summon it again with your Firewall Dragon. It could add to your hand another key player like a Solid Soldier or a Vion to go and, you know, play another, I guess, part of your deck's engine in case you need some more steam, maybe into the next turn, or just a free monster to summon. You could go and add Honest Neos to your hand to use as another round of defense. There are a lot of applications for this card, and honestly, just the fact that Stratos exists and it lets you re-abuse it, I think is worth playing that. And then one for one, which of course lets you not only get things started by discarding your Mally or other dead cards from your hand, but it lets you choose between your 𝗖𝗍𝗊𝗲, who will come back as 2 free monsters, which is really cool, or you can even choose Grapple Angler if you end up having to do that because you drew your 𝗖𝗍𝗊𝗲. So it's never really dead, especially again in a 60 card deck. The chance of you drawing this alongside both of your level 1s is so slim, and realistically this is just going to get you more value by kicking things to the grave like Mally again, and bringing out things like 𝗖𝗍𝗊𝗲 who give you more cards. And then since it's a 60 card deck, I do like 3 copies of Pot of Desires. Basically, you're rarely going to see multiples of this. There was one test hand, I will say, out of many where I ended up Desires in a 60 card deck. Hey, it can happen, but speaking in terms of probability, that's not something you expect to happen. It's not something you should be worried about mathematically. So I do like the 3. The whole point of this is it makes it so if you don't have a kicker combo going, it gets that rolling for you. And you can always, of course, use it as an extender once you've set up your Firewall Dragon, you know, gone through your Brilliant Fusion and other delicate engine parts, and just draw cards so that you're able to keep summoning more monsters to the field. It makes sure that you don't run out of steam, and that's why I ultimately chose it over Allure, where this card just straight up gives you an additional card, so you get 2 new cards to use for your one, versus Allure, you end up losing another potential option along the way. And then finally in the main, 2 Called by the Grave is of course what we're allowed. Probably would have run 3 since this was a 60 card deck, but with the new format, I think it is nice that, you know, we still have the ability to use this to protect your Stratos and your Hero Lives and whatever, but with the Hero Lives down to 1, I'm not quite as worried about, you know, paying a 4K price for nothing. And yeah, Called by the Grave is just used offensively and defensively these days, so I think it's worth playing in this strategy just to round out the main. And then we're going to talk about the extra deck. So I already talked a little bit about, you know, the key link monsters here. Talked a little bit about Proxy Dragon and its ability as well. That's also to help you link Climb if you need it, because then you can bring Proxy Dragon back if you're not using it as just a defensive card. Then another generic Link 3 is of course Unicorn, which lets you not only clear your opponent's cards that are already on the field, but helps you go for more draw power alongside Nightmare Griffin, which we're playing, and basically just gives you more arrows, lets you link Climb. There are a lot of uses for this thing, so I like it as a generic Link 3. The Griffin I mentioned, which don't forget lets you discard a card and set a spell or trap to your field from your graveyard that you can't use that turn, but set Soul Charge and use it again. Or even set like a Mass Change or a Super Poly that you've used, and now you can use it again. And there's some pretty good targets in this strategy for this card. Definitely am liking it. And while it's on the field, anything that's not linked can't use its ability if it was special summoned. So this alongside like a Firewall Dragon or a Darklaw can be quite annoying, and thanks to 𝗪𝗔𝗪𝗔's diagonal arrows, Summon Sorceress's diagonal arrows, Isolde's diagonal arrows, it's very easy to place this in your middle zone or on the ends where your opponent doesn't have access to free link arrows, and then you just, you know, carve out your extra monster zones just so your opponent doesn't have a freebie effect activation. So pretty solid card to help bolster your boards. And then Borreload Dragon is basically so powerful I fit it in here. This is the only card among the links where it's not like inherently based on a combo, but it's just so strong. I do recommend you play this thing because you do get a lot of extra value out of it. it can close out games. Then for our hero monsters, basically the 𝗍𝗇𝗊𝗓 I mentioned. This guy again has the 𝗪𝗍𝗑 effect and combos nicely with Darklaw. We have 𝗍𝗓𝗓𝗑 and the Shining as well, mainly because, I mean, they have cute little effects, right? 𝗍𝗓𝗓𝗑 basically gains 100 attack for every fallen elemental hero in your graveyard, which isn't bad, starting with its 2500 attack. Shining is similar, it's 2600 attack, and each of your banished elemental hero monsters gives it 300 extra attack, so, you know, Miracle Fusion for this guy, and now you get an additional 600 points to 32. And he does have a recovery effect where when he's sent to the graveyard, and it's a when, so you do miss timing, unfortunately. It's just a card that hasn't aged well. You're able to recover 2 of your hero monsters that are banished back to your hand, but realistically, you're not using these 2 as, you know, things you're aiming for. These are super poly targets, because if your opponent has an annoying Borreload Dragon or a Firewall Dragon or, you know, something along those lines, because there are a lot of really powerful 𝗖𝗍𝗄𝗡 combo enablers and power cards that are dark and light, just go and fuse them up, and you're able to go and summon this. Basically, we're not playing Nova Master, Great Tornado, or Gaia because they're not only underwhelming, to be completely honest, but those attributes aren't seen everywhere, and usually you can make the most damage just getting rid of lights and darks, and then of course 𝗍𝗇𝗊𝗓 is actually worth fusing for. So side the other heroes perhaps. You know, you still are able to search Super Poly using your Predaplant engine if you would like, and everything else is fine and dandy. You know, you're able to get your plays off despite, you know, not getting Brilliant Fusion. But that's why I chose these 2 specifically. I think they do give a little extra reach that ends up being worth it in the long run. And then our masked heroes, Acid, of course, mass change your 𝗍𝗇𝗊𝗓 into this guy, and now you pop your opponent's back row as well, and weaken their monsters that are still on the field by 300 if they have any. And then we also have masked hero Diane. This is a card that I haven't played for a while because, you know, Wild Heart wasn't the best target for this guy. But essentially, if you mass change your solid soldier, not only, you know, in later turns does that trigger its ability to bring back, let's say, Shadow Mr. Stratos, and then, you know, trigger its ability, but Diane has 2800 attack, and when you kill an opponent's monster by battle with this and send it to the grave, you could special summon a level 4 or lower hero from your deck. Its effects do activate, so you can activate Shadow Mist's effect, you can go and activate Stratos' effect, you can go ahead and use this for 𝗖𝗍𝗓𝗡𝗃 to send a Malicious and then combo up through that link ladder I just showed you, and then go for your Firewall Dragon this way. So Diane basically makes a very powerful opening sequence if you end up going second and you have the opportunity to kill maybe an opponent's link monster that's vulnerable on the field. So very powerful, lets you go for all your key plays, lets you go for your Darklaw play just by getting Shadow Mist. It's a very well-rounded card, and since you finally have Solid Soldier as a decent target, it ends up being worthwhile. And I just wanted to give a very brief aside talking about why exactly is this a 60 card deck, JD? Well, first, I was actually trying to build this deck right before the ban list was announced last week. I was actually planning on just doing a Darklaw Turbo deck, and I honestly didn't really like it. It was way too streamlined, and I didn't like how linear it was, but this was the core concept here, right? So you end up with just these combo cards, and then Stratos really adds a lot of depth to it because now we can suddenly incorporate Isolde, Summon Sorceress, and all these other cards. We can add the 𝗖𝗍𝗓 and the Destiny Hero Malicious and such. And when you start doing that, not only does the deck itself start getting big, but you have, you know, dead draws potentially within your Maliciouses. You don't necessarily want to draw your Isolde targets, your Equip Spell, and your Grappler Angler. You don't want to draw, you know, your Glow Up Bulb instead of your Lone Fire Blossom. You don't want to draw your Darlingtonia Cobra or Gem Knight Garnet for your Brilliant Fusion engine. So there are a lot of dead cards in here, or potentially dead cards. And what I found is by maximizing to 60 really awesome cards that tie the theme together, you end up increasing the size of the deck to make those dead cards not as much of a problem, but you're not deadening the consistency of the deck overall because you have access to an extra deck toolbox that searches your cards. You have things like, you know, 3 E-calls with the Rhoda on your Stratos and Shadow Mist that can search stuff. So, you know, most of the time you're able to get to exactly what you need. Just a little bit of advice for how I like to play this deck. Usually the Shadow Mist will be getting mask change. That's a fairly important thing that I didn't necessarily mention when I was building this deck, is something I found along the way. Very easy to get a free hero monster, yes, but I think that's a poor use of Shadow Mist. You're going to get more outcomes in your favor if you have, you know, Firewall loops, all this stuff, and you set up a board with Darklaw with something else, whether that's Darklaw Proxy Dragon 𝗍𝗇𝗊𝗓, or it's Darklaw with Firewall Dragon, or a Griffin, or whatever else. The Darklaw really does help if you're going second, so do consider, you know, using Shadow Mist for that mask change search ability. So those are the 2 things I wanted to mention here. Why is the deck 60? It ends up being more consistent this way, and I think it's a lot more fun as well, because as long as you know kind of what's in here and why. You get the most out of this deck, and then it makes sure that you're able to, you know, make the most out of the combos that are available in this deck. You don't run out of steam by having all of this, and I think it works because of the inherent consistency heroes have with all of their redundancies. And then, yeah, mask change is your target. If you watched the video in its entirety, thanks! Hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing the creation of this deck as much as I did throwing it all together and testing it out for you guys. So we'll start off with this monster here with double Armageddon Knight, Blackwing Steam the Cloak, and then triple Destiny Hero Malicious. Then we got for Elemental Heroes Honest Neos, Ice Edge, and triple Shadow Mist, and Solid Soldier, and of course Stratos free at last. We got Glow Up Bulb here, Grappler Angler, and triple Lone Fire Blossom. We got then a trio of Performages in Damage Juggler, Hat Tricker, and Trick Clown. Then we got our darling Tonia Cobra and triple Ophrys Scorpio. Vion, because at 1 it's searchable and it's a hard once per turn. Then we got Gem Knight Garnet as well. Then for our spells we have a Hero Lives down to 1 thanks to Stratos, triple Brilliant Fusion, double Called by the Grave, 1 DDR for Sold. We got triple E Emergency Call, 1 Foolish Burial, triple Mask Change, triple Miracle Fusion, Monster Reborn, 1-for-1 Polymerization, triple Pot of Desires, Reinforcement of the Army, Soul Charge, Super Polymerization, 3, The Warrior Returning Alive, and 2, World Legacy Succession, again for the maximum number of cards for the maximum amount of steam. And then we have our Link monsters here. Starting off, we have Isolde and Proxy Dragon at Link 2. Then we got Nightmare Unicorn and Summon Sorceress at Link 3. Then we got Borreload Dragon, Firewall Dragon, Nightmare Griffin, and Saryuja Skull-Dread as the mighty 4 Link 4s, and then we have Gem Knight, Seraph Knight for Brilliant Fusion. Then for Elemental Heroes, the Omnis, we got Absolute Zero, 𝗪𝗏𝗄𝗏, and Shining. Then we got for Masked Heroes, Acid, Darklaw, and Diane. That's the end of this video, but there's plenty more where it came from. I invite you to explore the playlists on screen to see what else I have to offer, and if you really liked what you saw today, consider subscribing to JD Gaming for more Yu-Gi-Oh videos. Thanks guys, this is JD Gaming, hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you guys next time.